Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, saluting Earth Day on April 22nd with an ongoing commitment to help offset carbon emissions with sustainable harvesting of Missouri forests. Details at choosewood.com.
Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Jonathan Ahl. Today we're taking a look at the impact of more than 80 days of flooding along rivers in the St. Louis region, where many area residents are still feeling the effects. With us in the studio to talk about how they've been dealing with flooding in their respective communities are Adam Jones, a fourth-generation farmer on about 900 acres of land in Missouri in Lincoln and St. Charles counties, and Herb Simmons, the longtime mayor of East Carondelet in Illinois. Adam just fought the recent flooding, as about half of his acreage is in the floodplain, and Herb is the director of the St. Clair County Emergency Management Agency. Adam and Herb, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Adam, let's start with you. So tell me about your farm. About 900 acres?
Yes, sir.
What were you able to get in the ground at all?
So we were able to, we're lucky enough that about half of our ground is in the hills. So we were lucky enough to get our hill ground in, but it was significantly delayed because of all the rain that we've had. But all of our bottom ground is sitting idle at the moment. The water has receded off of most of it, but it's still very wet, and we just got another big rain on Friday and Saturday. So we still don't have anything planted on those acres, and about half of that is actually still underwater because it's a little bit lower.
So what are you expecting in yields of what you were able to plant?
Our yields will be significantly hampered because of the lateness of our planting. You know, our beans, we actually finished planting beans June 15th, which is about a month later than we'd like to have them be finished planting. And our corn was planted about 3 to 4 weeks later as well.
So you did get in by the June 5th deadline for crop insurance on the corn?
Yes, and our side is actually June 1st is the cutoff date. But yeah, we were able to plant before that, but just barely. I think we finished planting corn about May 29th.
Now, I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole of agriculture economics here, but beans, the market's just incredibly depressed. The trade war is causing problems. But you got to that point where you kind of had to plant beans because it was too late to put more corn in the ground by the time the rest of the field dried out?
A lot of people did that, were forced to make that decision. We were lucky enough that we found a couple of windows, and we're smaller farmers, so we were able to get our corn in where we had planned to plant corn.
Okay.
Just because we're a smaller farmer, we were able to hit the windows just perfectly.
But some of your friends and neighbors who farmed,
Absolutely.
They were definitely in that where they had no choice to plant beans, knowing full well that the market for beans is just horrible and doesn't look like it's going to rebound, but they had to plant beans because it was just too late to put corn in the ground.
Yeah, and the carryover in the bean market is going to be huge this year, which impacts the potential price looking forward too. But actually yesterday as I drove to our FSA office to report planted acreage, I just was noticing all the ground is planted in beans. On a road that would normally be, usually everybody around us is half and half, and they'll rotate corn to beans pretty equally. Both sides of the road are just solid beans for all 20 miles. So lots of beans this year.
And that's just going to make the problem worse because the market's already bad, but we're going to be flooded with even more beans because people didn't have a choice.
I would think so, yes.
So to the average person that may not know a lot about agriculture and they're just driving through Missouri or Illinois, what they see is they may look at a cornfield or a bean field and a lot of it looks pretty good, and then there's that low-lying area where there's almost nothing growing, or what is growing is a lot shorter. What is that going to end up looking like at the end of the growing season and around harvest time?
Well, if that plant even puts soybeans on it or puts an ear on the corn, it'll be very small. And as you look across a lot of the cornfields, usually we're looking for even emergence and an even stand, so that all the plants get the same sunlight, get the same nutrients, use the same nutrients, and so on. And also so that they're tall enough to drown out weeds, to keep sunlight from getting to the weeds. And every field of corn that you see is very, very uneven. So our yields across the state of Missouri and certainly south central Illinois are going to be very impacted, probably 20 to 35%, I would say at least.
One thing I did find really interesting is that old phrase that's really totally outdated, corn should be knee-high by the 4th of July, has not been relevant for decades.
Right.
And, most 4th of Julys, if you're out in a field, the corn is eye height or higher. But this year, really, if you are knee-high by the 4th of July, you might be doing better than a lot of corn farmers.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have a lot of people around us who have had to replant, and there's a lot of places up in northern Missouri. I have friends that have corn that's 12 inches tall, and that's unheard of because they were still planting probably the 5th of June or 7th of June or something like that. So, yeah, knee-high by the 4th of July has been outdated for a very long time. you were hoping it's over your head or even tasseling by now. But yeah, it's way behind schedule. The corn is very small, and like I said, yields will be very low.
You know, we would love to hear your stories as well. If you were affected by the flood, if flooding hurt you or your property in some way, we'd love to hear about it. Join the conversation by giving us a call at 314-382-8255. That's 382-TALK. Or you can send us a tweet at STL on air or email us at talk@stlpublicradio.org. Herb Simmons, now the town you are the mayor of, Carondelet, not affected by the flood this time around?
It was affected, but not like it was back in 1993 or 2015. We didn't have any of the major flooding that we did back then.
Well, what about, because you're the emergency management agent for all of St. Clair County, how did the county in general fare this time around?
This time, I believe we did real well, and I attribute that to a lot of improvements to the levee system throughout the county along the Mississippi River. The three counties, Madison, St. Clair, and Monroe, had all went together and formed a flood prevention council and passed a tax to do some much-needed repair. They didn't want to wait for the federal government, which wasn't going to be able to offer any help until about 2044. And there's going to be a lot of flooding.
That soon?
Going to be a lot of flooding between now and then. So those three counties went together, and there's been like $80 million that's been spent over the last several years of improving the levee system, putting in new pumps, new relief wells, and just improving the entire system. So when I get asked the question, well, how did you fare this time? We did well. In 2015, we had multiple roads throughout the county that was underwater damaged. And this time around, we've probably got maybe anywhere from 15 to 20 of them that was flooded. That's going to have some major repairs done to them. But, we fared fairly well this time around.
But even though you fared well, and maybe there wasn't as much property damage, there's still a huge toll on a county, a city, individual property owners when there's a threat of a flood. Can you talk us through about, because people can look now, it looks dry, and they think, well, there wasn't a ton of damage, so no harm done, but there's still a big effect on your community.
Oh, there's a large effect. In fact, we started preparing for this flooding in March. The State of Illinois Emergency Management Agency came down and met with us. I think it was like March 10th or 11th. And they had representatives there from the National Weather Service, the Corps of Engineers, and we had an all-day in-service, basically, and they were giving us the prediction that we could see record-level flooding dating back to 1993, which scared me because I was there in 93. And so they convinced me that day that we went back, and the following day we started pre-filling sandbags and got some of the inmates out of the county jail to help us, and we bagged up about 20,000 sandbags and pre-staged them throughout the county in the areas that we are known to have flooding issues. So we took it serious, and then when we were getting daily reports from the Corps of Engineers, conference calls, and so as we were watching the prediction of what was going on up north above us and the amount of water that was still up there and the ice melting that had to come our way, we kind of planned accordingly. So being proactive rather than being reactive is like we like to say. And then we reached the point where when the river was about 44 feet, I called in the area where I'm the mayor in East Carondelet, Illinois, in the Dupo area, called a town hall meeting at the local high school, and standing room only, couldn't put anybody else in there. And I basically had representatives there from our first responders, from the political sector. Our county chairman, Mark Kern, was there, the health department. We got everybody together just to say, yeah, if the river continues to go higher, when it gets to be about 47 feet, keeping in mind that in 1993 it reached 49.6 in our area, which was real close. There wasn't a lot of freeboard left. So I told them then we would be calling for a voluntary evacuation, and we were clear. You don't have to run home and start packing up your belongings, but just start being vigilant, start keeping an eye on what we're doing daily. But it does take a toll. It takes a toll on personal families. Our first responders have to plan accordingly. There's a lot of things that didn't take place this time that we did in 93 and even in 2015. Even though we had some rain this time, in 93 we had rain for 3 weeks solid, it seemed like, every day. From the time you woke up until the next morning, it just rained. And as Alan and I was talking, there was issues with the reservoirs being over full back then. They had to start releasing. So there was a perfect storm back then that we didn't see this time.
What was the mood like at that town hall meeting?
Town hall meeting, mood was great. We got a lot of compliments. We're very active on our social media. We actually streamed the meeting that night. There was a couple of spectators there that you could tell was aggravated. One gentleman was upset that a pump that we had loaned him didn't have any gas in it when it was brought to him. But that's just people's anxiety and the unknown. And the purpose of that meeting was we wanted them to know that we are prepared and we're monitoring this, and we wanted them to monitor it also. But no, the overall meeting, people came up, and about the first 20 minutes of the meeting, we noticed some people had got up and started leaving, and we found out later on that evening they left because they'd heard what they wanted to hear in the first 20 minutes, that no, they didn't have to go home and pack everything up and leave. But social media, like I said, we worked it every day, and to the tune of about 19 days, we had over 5 million hits on our social media page. And it was 99% all positive. Thank you. Keep up the good work. Again, I think being proactive the way we was really helped out. But to answer your question, it takes a toll. Some roads had to be closed, people had to be rerouted, and now those roads have to be repaired somehow.
We'll talk more about this after a quick break. You're listening to St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, saluting Earth Day on April 22nd with an ongoing commitment to help offset carbon emissions with sustainable harvesting of Missouri forests. Details at choosewood.com.
Now back to our conversation with Adam Jones, a fourth-generation farmer in Missouri, and Herb Simmons, the longtime mayor of East Carondelet, Illinois, and director of St. Clair County Emergency Management Agency, as we're talking about flooding. Now, Adam, what is it, one of the things that's so different about flooding in terms of natural disasters, like with a tornado, it comes quickly and then you have this big aftermath. But with flooding, the lead-up is like, so what's it like sitting in your house, looking out over the field? It's already wet and it's raining. What's that like?
The wait is the worst part. We joked about it every day that I just wish it would be here. I wish the crust would be here, and it took forever to come. And actually, when we thought it had crested, the levee broke down and hardened, and it actually dropped the water all the way up by us. And so we kind of had a little miniature celebration because we thought we were good to go, and then it started raising again. The wait is terrible. It's nice to have the preparation time, so we were able to build a flood wall around our farmhouse. We were able to get everything raised up in our sheds. But we were done with that 2 days before it really, really got there. And you just kind of look around and you think, I can't believe it's going to get 4 foot higher. I can't believe it's going to get 3 foot higher. I just can't believe I can't imagine what it's going to look like when it gets that deep here. And there on our farm, there was nothing left. There was no bare ground left. Everything was underwater. We have our house. We have a neighbor has a house there. And then we've got several sheds and grain bins, and there was no dry ground left to be had. We came in by boats, and so it's nice to have the preparation time, but it is mentally exhausting to sit there and just try to picture and envision what it's going to be like. And you're looking at the forecast, and they're calling for rain at the same time as the crest, and what's that going to do? Because we're also on the Quiver River, which is a tributary to Mississippi, so we can get flooding, additional flooding from that as well. So. Your brain goes pretty crazy trying to figure out exactly what you need to do and what's important and what isn't important. So it's mentally exhausting.
Herb, did you have that similar thing when you're filling sandbags and you don't, you have the prediction that it could be as bad as 93, but you don't know for sure? Is it that same mental exhaustion during the preparation time?
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with what Alan said. I mean, it's from the day we had that first meeting with the officials from the state, my stress level started just clicking away because living through the 93 and the 2015 especially, working their way up till now, it starts because the mental strain and knowing that back in 93 I was responsible for just East Carondelet basically, and now in 2019 I'm responsible for 270,000 residents in the county, and not only on the Mississippi but on the Kaskaskia River. So our responsibility was just that much bigger. But every day you find yourself. One of the ironic parts is that the town hall meeting we had, the National Weather Service people were there, and they were predicting when the crest was going to be, and I interrupted them, and I said, don't stand here and tell this capacity crowd that once this river crest, it's over with, because in 1993 I went through 7 river crests. And sure enough, here come one crest, and then here come another one. So just because it happened the first crest comes, you're not out of the woods yet. And the stress level is, and like I said, not only on myself but my staff and the volunteers that were coming out helping people, and your highway workers and people like that. It's mentally exhausting, as Alan said.
No, the Illinois National Guard was there in part to keep people off the levees. Was that a big problem?
Oh, yes, it's a big problem. It was a big problem in 93, and I kind of had hoped that people became better educated after that. But I called the National Guard in because a lot of issues are sightseers.
Looky-loos.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is, and 95% of the people that had to be asked to leave the levee were from Missouri. And their response was, we want to come over here and see what it looked like. Yeah. And we would tell them, it looks the same on this side as it does the other side. It's a lot of water. But, the problem is that if they wanted to come and just get out of the car and look at it, it's fine. But we'd actually, the first day that the National Guard came in, they actually had 3 young people taking the sandbags off of one of our flood walls and throwing the bags into the canal, and just stuff like that.
Why would anybody do that?
Just being dumb. But yeah, it was but they were there not only to help keep the people off the levees, but they were also our eyes and ears. Over in our area, we have had a lot of issues with sand boils, and we wanted to make sure the integrity of the levee was intact, so they would get out and walk the levees. And back in 93, one of the biggest sand boils that they located back then, we were able to find from a helicopter. So we did a helicopter flyover this time just to I sent the levee district personnel and the Corps of Engineer people up just so they could get a bird's eye view of it, to make sure that there was nothing with the levees that could be seen from above.
If you'd like to share your flood story with us, we'd love to hear from you. 314-382-8255. That's 382-TALK. You can send us a tweet at STL On Air, or email us at talk@stlpublicradio.org. Let's talk about the financial impact of all of this, because it sounds like in some ways we dodged the catastrophic things that this area has experienced in the past, but there's still a huge financial impact. Adam, do you have any sense yet? I know it's hard to know this far in advance, but do you have a sense of what this is going to mean for your farm and your operation? To be this far behind and with that lower of a yield?
It certainly means we won't be profitable this year. I would estimate that our gross revenues will be off by somewhere over $400,000. That's gross, not net, obviously, and they're off, obviously impacted by grain prices and commodity prices, which have risen since all this rain, and because planting is delayed all across, not just Missouri but Illinois and Iowa as well. So prices have seen some rebounding. Unfortunately, when you have to take prevent plant through your crop insurance, that price is set in February.
And did you do that?
Yes, we have filed prevent plant on some of our acres. We're still hopeful to plant some soybeans around our house there. We understand the yields will be very, very bad, but we have contracts we have to fill. That's another issue that farmers have. If you have a grain contract, if you had marketed some of that grain already, you have to fill that. So it's going to have a huge financial impact on us. Like I said, we're certainly not going to be profitable this year, but thanks to crop insurance, we'll be able to exist until next year.
What about the USDA program for the trade mitigation that will pay you based on profitability of your county? Since it's related to other people around your county, will that help at least some?
So the Market Facilitation Program, or MFP,
yes.
will only be paid on planted acres. And that's the way it has to be through the program, through the CCC program as it's set.
Was there a deadline for planted by a certain date?
Yes, so it has to be planted by. Well, there's a as you mentioned, June 5th for corn, and soybeans is July 15th.
Okay.
And then you've got 20 days after that where your insurance drops 1% every day, and then you have a hard cutoff at that point in time. Mm-hmm. So there are deadlines for that. There's also common sense deadlines of when it's profitable and when it's not profitable to plant a crop on your own fields. We know that. The later it gets, as you get to as the crop starts maturing late in August, if there's no rain, or even if we had an early spring when you're planting this late, early fall, and we have an early frost, then that plant might not put beans on. So we are not eligible for the MFP if you don't plant the acres. Sure. They have circumvented that slightly by allowing people to plant cover crops. And if you plant a cover crop, you're going to be eligible. The details are not out yet, so I don't know if it's going to be a portion of that MFP payment. But you'll still be out the cost, to plant the cover crop, so probably going to be a break even at that point.
So depending on the weather in the fall, depending on how long it grows, depending on the moisture, and I mean, if it gets wet and you can't get out there to harvest, that could be so it's not going to be good, but it might be even worse depending on the weather at harvest time.
Yeah, and especially if we had an early frost. When you plant soybeans this late, sure. It's where you run into a potential bad condition there if we get the early frost and kill the plant off.
Now, Herb, what impact financially does this have on St. Clair County and your city and other cities in the region?
Well, it's definitely going to have an impact on the county. We're in the process now of still pumping water. And we probably will for the next probably 2 to 3 weeks. As Alan said, the ground is still saturated, even though we've had some good weather out there. Some of the tributaries are receding, and we want them to go down slow, especially at first, because we don't want to have many slides or anything on the inside of the levees. But it can go down as quick as it wants to. I want to get it down and get on. But financially, we're working with the state and with all the county municipalities, because anybody who has suffered any losses or incurred any costs, they have to submit those to my office, and then we compile the total at that time, and we'll submit it to the state. And what we'll be shooting for is for the state to get a federal declaration through FEMA, and that's our hopes. We did that in 2015, and of course we didn't receive that.
And you asked for more than $2 million in reimbursement from the federal government and got zero?
Yeah, actually we that was through the state, and they have to file it through FEMA.
Okay.
And then they were turned down.
The point, though, in 2015, your county was out $2 million.
Yeah. And that was all the municipalities together that suffered some type of loss.
Do you have a sense of what that number may look like this year?
Yeah, I would say it's probably going to be a little bit less. I know the community of East Carondelet, the roads that were impacted there is probably going to be right about $1 million. I just got those numbers last night from the engineer. And I haven't even got the numbers from down along the Kaskaskia River, but like I said, they've got about 12 roads down there that's still got water on them. That's probably going to have to be, one of them is a bridge that's going to have to be replaced. The county has to reach, in order to reach their threshold, is about $1.2 million. And the state's total threshold that they have to meet is right at $19 million. So I have no doubt in my mind that the state will reach their threshold, and then again you get into the battle with the FEMA people. Well, what's coverable, what isn't, how much we're going to allow for this or that. So it's a long process.
We have just about 30 seconds left. Great prevention. Your farm will rebound at some level. What is the takeaway message, briefly, that you'd like people to realize about how we may have gotten through this flood, but it's still a huge problem?
Yeah, it's a problem, and I tell people all the time, the Mississippi River was originally a bluff, and mankind has squeezed it down and built higher. We're going to continue to have flooding, and I just ask people to be vigilant and follow what the local emergency management people suggest to them, and that's to stay alert.
Same thing for farmers, Adam?
Yeah, just for the general public, don't forget about the flood just because the water goes off the road. We need help. We need better flood protection. So,
I want to thank Missouri farmer Adam Jones and East Carondelet Mayor Herb Simmons, who's also the director of the St. Clair County Emergency Management Agency, for joining us today. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, saluting Earth Day on April 22nd with an ongoing commitment to help offset carbon emissions with sustainable harvesting of Missouri forests. Details at choosewood.com.